and thank you for joining us for this episode of The State of Leadership Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitney Wiley, and we are here on Thursdays, 12 noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, talking all things leadership. And today we are talking about resilience. So, last week, if you joined us for our episode, we talked about change and in particular the bridges transition model, and we talked about that transition and letting go of the old way and getting to the new way and the in between, um, that happens there. And sometimes there's resistance, right? And sometimes people don't handle change particularly well. Well, there's a skill that you can develop and you can help your team members develop resilience that can help with that accepting and adapting to the change. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And often when I think about resilience, I think about that ability to bounce back, to get up and keep going. And it is that, but it's more than that, right? It's not just sort of enduring the hardship or enduring the change. It's about adapting and growing and leading with confidence, even though you don't know what's going on, even though there may be some fear there. And so we're going to talk about resilience and what you can do about it. Some opening thoughts, Robert.
No, just want to thank you for suggesting this topic because it really does go hand in hand with change. And when you said, using, I think I'm going to paraphrase, of course, using resilience to help with your leadership. We're also talking about self-leadership as well.
Yeah.
So, these can be applied to anyone, whether you have a team or you don't. It's really about motivating yourself so that you can then motivate other people as well.
I want to emphasize that point you just made, right? Everything that we're talking about starts with you as the leader.
Yeah.
And so it is that if you're going to be an effective leader, a great leader for other people, you have to be able to lead yourself first. And so that being a self leader is important, and it goes to one of our pillars, which is about self-awareness and understanding what you're going through, what you're feeling, and and how you're showing up. And being resilient again isn't about pretending like things aren't happening. It allows you to recognize that you may not, how about I put it this, you may not be jiggy with the change, right? It may not be exactly what you want. I'm going old school. I'm going
Wow.
old school. All right. You may not be jiggy with it, but right, it is what it is. It's here. And right, who are you going to be as a result of it? Who are you going to grow into as a result of it? And resilience is that piece that allows you to get there.
It's really interesting because as I was preparing for today's show, I was looking at some research and some articles about resilience and really thinking about it. And one thing that popped up was how some people tend to have an ability to work through nearly anything that happens to them. They can get sick, they can work through it, they can lose their job, they can work through it, they can, a relationship can fall apart, they can get through it, they can have a death in the family, they can get through it. While other people fall apart at the slightest little mishap. And two things came up. I'm a firm believer that if you practice nearly anything, you'll get better at it. And there are some people that believe that you just have these talents, they're given to you, and you can't do anything to get better, at them. And they talked about that. They said, well, it may have something to do with genetics, but regardless, whether it's something that you're born with that gives you a little extra grit, you can develop it. And some people don't take that extra step to develop, because what they end up doing is they try to engineer their lives so that they avoid any potential hardships. And so when they do that, when something happens that requires resilience, they just don't have it and they tend to fall apart.
So I, I'm going to make this probably more personal than ordinarily, um, because I feel like this skill is something that truly is born internally, right? And it's something that we create internally. And so my best attempt to explain some of the things we're going to talk about are going to tap into some experiences that I've had. Um, but a couple of things came to mind. You just said growth mindset and a fixed mindset, right? And people who feel like the world, things are happening to them. I think you said this last week, right? We talked about it when you feel like something is happening to you rather than I have a friend who says that, life is not happening to us, it's happening through us.
Oh, through. Okay.
And there's also usually it's like life is not happening to you, it's happening for you.
For you. Yeah, I've heard that
Um,
one.
and she says it's happening through you.
Mm.
And when she said that for the first time, I it struck a chord with me, right? Because if we like have to allow it to happen through us. It's a choice. And a lot of what we're talking about, and this is challenging for a lot of people because it's easy to say, well, this happened and this happened, and life is always happening, right? Change is happening, change is constant. We can't get through that or past that, but life is happening. Things are happening, events are happening that we don't want, that we don't like. And we have a choice of how we deal with, move through the things that are happening. And so when I think of resilience, and I will say this at some point, I don't know that I would have necessarily used the term resilience. I just know that I had some choices to make as things were happening in my life. And it was like, well, I could lay down or I could get back there and that bounce back. I could get back up. And what do I want? So again, if you have watched our show for any period of time, seen probably any one episode, there's not an episode that happens where I don't talk about the importance of you having a vision, right? A vision for your life, a vision for your leadership, because it's that north star. It's that thing that you're working towards, moving towards, so that when things are happening, life is happening, change is happening around you, you can look to that and say, that's where I'm going. Regardless of all the things swirling around me, that's where I'm going. And people, dare say, people who don't have vision, right? A vision of where they're going, it's easier to get them off track because the track or the path isn't going anywhere in particular, right? And so you're marching along and something comes and knocks you down, and you get up and you go, well, maybe I'll just go this way. or the wind blows you that way and you just start going that way rather than say, I got knocked down or I got blown off course and I'm going to get back on the path and the course that I was going on. And it's okay to get knocked off. I just want to say that. It's okay that you get knocked off, that you get blown around. The question is, what do you do after that? Do you get back and keep marching in the direction that you wanted to go, or do you not? I have a little caveat with that. Sometimes the getting blown off actually opens you up to some other possibilities. And that's fine too, because you can then say, you know what? I wasn't expecting that, but now I want to go this way. It's not that I just got blown in this direction, but it opens your eyes to something else and you go, okay, that's what I want to do. Ultimately, it's about intentionality and it's about the choices that we make. And we get to decide whether or not we're going to get up and keep moving or if we're going to lay down and let life sort of trample over us. And so something else you said made me think of this concept of entitlement to happiness, right? We live in a country, we're in the United States. We live in a country, and it's the Declaration of Independence, if I can remember my history. I wasn't planning to say this, so I'm pretty sure it's the Declaration of Independence, not the Constitution. The but maybe it's the preamble to the Constitution, right? Any of the life, liberty, and we're entitled to the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness. It doesn't say we're entitled to be happy, right? Therefore, there are going to be times when you're just not going to get what you want in your way. And when that happens, you don't give up. You don't give up. And so the question becomes, when you can't control what's happening, what can you control?
Right.
And the only thing you can control is how you respond.
Yeah. So you said a couple of things that opened up a couple of different doorways for me. I'm going to talk about two. One is, you said, the wind comes and blows you down. It's going to happen, right? So don't think of it, if it happens, it's going to happen. You have to be ready for when it happens. And it reminds me of a story. Years ago, when I was much younger, I was thinking about getting a motorcycle. And I had a friend that owned a motorcycle, and he was a frequent rider. And I said, I want to get a motorcycle, but I'm scared that I'm going to, fall. And he goes, my friend, there are two types of motorcycle riders: those that have been down and those that are going down. It's like, it's going to happen to you. The notion that you're going to get on something and you're going to keep going and it's going to be smooth sailing it's just not going to happen. So I'm not saying that you need to always be waiting for the next shoe to drop, but you need to understand that life is about peaks and valleys. It's not a straight line where you just go up, 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 or across. It's going to move up, it's going to move down. That's one thing. The second thing, which is really several things, is when you were talking about having a vision, it's really when I read this article, I was preparing for today's show, and I read an article about resilience. And one of the things that it was a really good article from the Harvard Business Review. And the author of the article was saying that resilient people have three traits. One is acceptance of their circumstance. That's something that we talked about a couple of shows ago. It may have been, I think it was even the last show when we talked about change. Acceptance of your circumstance. You need to be able to do that. The second thing is a deep sense of purpose that is usually connected to their values. And we can go deeper into each one of these if you want to. And the third one you also mentioned is improvisation or creativity. You need to be able to look at your circumstances. If you're used to abundance and you see scarcity, looking at that scarcity and making something of value to yourself and others. people and companies that can do this will thrive in times of change and turmoil. Other people that can't are going to wither up, wither away and die. So those are the three traits of resilient people and organizations.
I love the friend and your story about the motorcycle, right? It reminds me of when I wanted a bike and a new bike. I had gotten a bike, I don't know, in the early mid 80s and had ridden that bike for a good 30 years. I still have the bike.
Okay.
And but it was a bike of the times. It's a relatively good bike. It's a good brand. Spent at what was at the time a significant amount of money. Some people would still say it was a significant amount of
Okay.
money for a bike. It was a hybrid, and so it's sort of a 10 speed that it has more than 10 speeds, but it's a mountain bike and road bike sort of combo that allows you to do both things, right? So the tires aren't as thick as a mountain bike, but they're not as thin as a
Right.
road bike, and it's a little heavy. And so I was starting to do some activities that I wanted to. I still haven't learned to swim well enough to do a triathlon, but I run, and I was like, I have a bike, so I could do duathlons, and I'll do that. But the bike was a little too heavy for to move the way I wanted to. So I got saved my money, bought a really nice carbon fiber, road bike. And I learned that I needed to get pedals, right? And doing some research, and you get the pedals and the shoes and you clip in and the whole thing. And for a while after I got the bike, I didn't ride it clipped in.
Hmm.
A little fear, right? It was like afraid I was gonna fall. And I was talking to someone and she's like, um, you're going to fall. It's like you're
Scrap.
not going to ride and not fall, and you're not going to become the cyclist that you need to be if you don't take the chance to fall, right? And so the very first time I went, other than around the neighborhood, and I practiced the first couple of times on the grass. I'm in my shoes, I'm clipped in, I'm sort of on the grass trying to learn how to get my shoes clipped into the pedals. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to fall, I'll fall on the grass and it'll be okay. So I didn't fall initially. I rode around the neighborhood and it was fine. I go out for my first ride with a group of very skilled riders. They ride in centuries and all kinds of things. And that day, I fell 3 times in 3 different cities. Right, so we rode like, I don't know. I didn't do the entire ride, but we rode 30 miles or so. And I fell in 3 different cities, and that was sort of this thing. And it was I was so I and I only talk about the first fall. The first fall, I like pedaled, fell. And so I got stuck in a railroad track.
Yeah.
And as I was doing it, someone said, you need to cross at 90 degrees, otherwise you'll get sort of pulled in to the track. And as she was saying it, I was in the slowest motion you can imagine, falling to the ground. And I just remember her saying, you're gonna fall. It's sort of like, just accept. You're going back to acceptance, right? Just accept you're going to fall, and it's okay. We all fall. Everybody falls. Like you said, it's not when life is going to happen. It's not if life is going to happen. It's when.
Yeah.
And I'll dare say it's is happening all the time. Sometimes we are in a space, whether it's in an organization, in a relationship, in other areas of our life, that we have acquired skills and confidence in a way that whatever happens doesn't affect us, right? As much as in other areas. And if you stop and think about it, you can use the experiences and the lessons in the areas that you regularly navigate or that you navigate easily, right? And draw on those to use those in other areas. So you talked about acceptance, purpose and values, and then that flexibility, adaptability, and looking for how to create opportunities out of what's happening, right? And not be so rigid in the pursuit of, right? You have to have purpose and be keyed into your values and the vision so that you know where you're going, what you're doing, but you need to be flexible enough to recognize that maybe it's timing, right? Maybe it's something else you need. Maybe it's another skill or some knowledge or wisdom or something that is that you are getting from the experience that's going to help you in the bigger picture or further down the line. And it's okay. And what some of the conversations that I have with my clients around this topic is that they don't tend to see themselves as resilient until you take a step back and you look at a history, a pattern of things. And so ask yourself some questions, right? Be okay with asking yourself some questions and shifting your mindset from why is this happening to me to how can I grow from this? Right? How can I grow from this? And instead of feeling like, the world is against you or people are against you, right? It's like, what is in this for me that can help me grow and to continue to become the person that I need to be to fulfill the purpose, to get to that vision that I have. And if you can do that, then you can see that resilience is a part of who you are rather than being stuck in maybe a resistant mindset, right? Which is not accepting the what is piece.
Well, that's very interesting because resilient people often don't refer to themselves as being resilient because they're too busy living life. They just, they when you can accept that these negative things happen, they may be really inconvenient and you may not like them, but you can accept it. They may even go into a place where they're, fighting a little bit, but then they give way to acceptance, and that clears the path for them to really look at a situation and go, okay, how is this going to help me get to where I'm going? Whenever, this is going to sound really weird and maybe a bit egocentric, but whenever I was having a couple of years ago significant hardships, I kept saying, this is going to be a great story when I'm on the stage talking about this. I would phrase it or frame it in that way, because as you know, I went through a couple of things like strung together, and what I did was I would just say that to myself is, I would envision myself actually doing that. And so what it did was it gave the hardship that I was going through meaning and purpose. It's so I can help other people that may be going through the same thing, or maybe similar, or maybe just a hard time. And so that's what's really important about being resilient. You have to be able to look at how the situation, the negative situation, I'll use that term, that is happening in the moment may be able to help you in the future. And there are some people that just can't do that. They just get stuck. They're maybe not as creative. Um, the word lazy came to mind. I don't want to use that word, but there's some people that they just want things to be even and easy. And if you find a world where that exists, invite me to come live with you because that is not the world we are living in. But some people, that's what people want. And it's an almost unreasonable expectation of what life is going to be like, because life is very seldom easy and even without its ups and downs. Look, I don't want to be pessimistic, but if you're in a relationship and everything is going great and you have great health, good for you. I can almost guarantee you that one of you is going to come to the end of their life before the other person. That's a hardship and a change. So these things are going to happen. You need to build up the ability to be able to, and the word they use is bouncing back. You used it earlier, is bouncing back. It's almost an elastic quality to that.
Yeah.
So you bend, but you don't break, or you bounce back from these things. So it's really important to think about this and to try to come up with some ways to handle these unfortunate circumstances, because they're going to happen.
Um, I'm no doctor. Well, that's not true. I am a doctor. I'm a Juris Doctor,
You
but
are
I'm no doctor.
here.
But I'm no doctor, right? I'm not a doctor in the sense that I can diagnose. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a doctor of psychology. And diagnosing, some things. I don't have. I mean, I could speculate and whatnot, but neuroplasticity, right? I'm a student of understanding human behavior from an organizational behavior perspective, which is about human behavior in organizations, really. But something that you said made me think of, when we are not accepting and we are struggling against, and we are determined that things need to be a particular way, it should be easy. And and I sort of want to caveat this because I am not woo woo. I don't think I'm woo woo, or
I think
certainly
you are.
or overly woo woo, but I am a believer, in energy and vibes, and if that's woo woo, then so be it. And recognizing that we create our reality. At the same time, we do not control, we're in a environment of 8 billion other people who are also controlling things. And so, going back to the point, things happen, things are going to happen, events are going to happen. And as much as I choose to say that, things happen easily for me, I also recognize that there are times when if something is happening and they don't come to me particularly easily. And you were talking about, a time in your life when things were not, it felt like things were coming back to back to back. And I've been there as well. It, I have not had, I would say, a right, it's not been necessarily an easy life. I haven't had like the hardest life, even with the things that have happened to me. Um, some pretty horrific things. And I think we've talked about on the show. I know you know personally because you know me, that my son passed away.
Mhm.
Right. I have one child and he passed away. It'll be 20 years in June. And he was 17 at the time. And I remember people after, some period of time afterwards, or when I meet people who were not a part of my life then, And they're saying, oh, you're so strong and you're so resilient, sort of going to your point. I wouldn't have, if someone came to me and said, laid out the 5 words that describe you, resilient would probably not have been
Right.
in my vocabulary for that. But when I step back, I can say, okay, I can see the resilience there, even though I would not have characterized myself that way. And when people would say, oh, you're so strong, and I could never, I don't know how you live through it. For me, it sort of boils down to this: what choice do I have? Right? What choice do I have? If I'm going to be here alive, I have choices every single day to make about how I want my life to unfold. Do I get everything that I want? No. Do I get more things that I want than I don't? Yes. Because I think it's because I am purpose driven, I have a vision, I'm clear on my values, and I accept responsibility and the consequences that come with the actions that I choose to take. And it, all of that, um, I think probably more than anything, but there were things that happened to me before my son passed away. But that event in and of itself has, I think, set me up in a way that I get, if I don't choose, and I don't know if that I can drive this point home any more forcefully, regardless of whether we're talking organizationally or we're talking personally, what you decide to do and how you decide to move forward, how you decide to interact with other people plays such a huge role in how, if you learn and adapt, right? And what you can do with that. So I could have become an alcoholic quite easily, very easily in that time, or a drug addicted, right? People do
Mm-hmm.
when they are met with hardships, right? And not accepting what is and trying to make it easier to deal with, to cope with, right? Turning to substances in order to try to maneuver through that. And I specifically remember having internal conversations. They weren't conversations that I had with anyone in my life, maybe a therapist, but not family members, friends, that, oh, I'm struggling here. Maybe I could do this. And taking the time to say, that is not, first of all, that's not going to solve the problem,
No.
right? And recognizing that going down that path wasn't going to solve a problem, and it wasn't going to be honoring of my son and his life. And so again, it was about making choices, and it that reminds me of this concept of Jack Canfield and his book, Success Principles. In the very first principle is taking 100% responsibility for your life, right? Is taking ownership. We don't control the circumstances, but we do control our response. And I don't think I said this earlier, but I wrote it down as you were talking. Smooth seas never made a skilled sailor.
I love that saying. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Smooth seas never made a skilled sailor. And so it is because of what we go through that we become stronger, that we are able to connect with, right? And actually lead people from a place of vulnerability and a place of authenticity that doesn't exist without sort of a share. It doesn't have to be the exact same things that you went through, but that you've gone through things that you've overcome, and people are like, I can relate to that. I can relate to you because everything hasn't been super easy laid out on a silver platter. I can relate to you. We can connect on that. Not misery loves company, but that we have this shared experience of moving through things that have been challenging and that you've overcome.
Yep. Absolutely. And when you were talking, and you said, you're not a doctor, but you appreciate, and you start talking about neuroplasticity. This is really about neuroscience, and it's about what you do when your amygdala takes over. It gets hijacked by circumstances, and you get that flood of adrenaline and cortisol and all those things that put you in fight or flight. And what we can do is train our brains. And me, I'm about 30% woo woo, 70% science. And this is not really even woo woo, but when I say mindfulness, people tend to think
Yeah.
of the woo woo. But there is science behind mindfulness, and just being mindful, doing that, that I call it mindful meditation, where you're focusing on your breathing, will train your brain to go into your prefrontal cortex. When you have these types of situations, you more easily get there than if you didn't train your brain, and you let your amygdala take over. You will then be hijacked and will do things or say things that will unfortunately not lead you down a path that you don't necessarily want to
Yeah.
go. And so really doing a daily practice, they mention 20 to 30 minutes a day,
Mhm.
is recommended. I always say start small and build up to that if you're having a hard time. And people tend to think that, oh, meditation or mindfulness is about clearing your mind. No, it ain't. It's not about doing that. It's about focusing on your breathing. And when you have a thought, accept it and let it go, and then go back to focusing on your breathing. It's not about clearing your mind, because the only people I know that can clear their mind totally are people that don't have anything in there anyway. So
Or dead people.
yeah, that you have thoughts because you have experiences, and there are things that are
Yeah.
going on in your life that are going to come up. So you accept those things, you acknowledge them, and then you let them go, and then you breathe through them. So a simple practice like that can be very helpful. I often recommend it to my clients when they talk about trying to release stress and be more resilient. And then paired with these three other things, I think that's going to be a really good recipe. I'm going to introduce some of the other concepts like I talked about before: acceptance, and having a clear sense of purpose, and having that improvised, I call it improvised creativity. When I was doing some research on this, and I'm going to yield the floor to you in a minute. When I was looking at trait number 2, a deep sense of purpose, what came up for me in my mind was Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning.
Mhm.
And then,
Mhm.
and then right after I thought it, the next page talked about it, because that is um, what many people that teach resilience or train others in resilience, they use his experiences as the template for building that potential, that part of the model, which is a sense of purpose. And for those of you who don't know, Viktor Frankl was in a concentration camp during World War II in Auschwitz, and he used that experience to then write his book, Man's Search for Meaning.
No, absolutely. And, meditation, journaling, right? Affirmations, these are all things that give you the opportunity, and I'll share sort of, three things that you can do to build this resilient mindset, in addition to the acceptance and having purpose, vision, and being flexible and adaptable. And this goes to this neuroplasticity piece, which is being willing to reframe the setbacks, right? And we've talked about this in some respects, right? Instead of viewing them as failures, th- just see that as part of the process. It's part of the process. And the Stoics say that obstacles are the way, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have roadblocks. You're going to have obstacles. You're going to have challenges. There's going to be trials and tribulations in your life. And again, you can reframe those and see them. This is just part of the process. This is an opportunity for me to dig deeper, to grow, to ask some questions, right? And so ask yourself, do you see roadblocks, or do you see them as a chance to take a new direction, right? And sometimes even to get to your vision means that you need to take a detour, right? So that flexibility piece, that adaptability piece. If you, and we use Waze, right? There are other navigating systems in your car. You could use Google Maps or whatever, but we tend to use Waze. And so you plug in a destination, right? It charts paths, some options from where you are to where you want to be. It gives you the options. You pick the option that you want. The options are generally meant to be optimized, however, whether it's for time or, right, you don't want to go on toll roads. I know that's a big thing where you are. um you know, are there is there is there construction, are there accidents, right? And it takes these things into account to chart different paths for you. So you can have your vision and your end goal, your end game, but how you get there depends on what's happening throughout your life, and throughout the journey. And it's the same for our lives, right? So we can get to the end result in any number of different ways. And so reframing that failure and the setbacks, and that they're part of the process, and it's okay. And if you do that, one of the things that allows you, particularly as a leader, is it allows you to set examples for your people on how they can respond when things are happening within the group, within the team. And so it's important for you to be able to do that. So have a perspective that sees change as opportunity and not a threat. We talked about that last week, reframing failure and setbacks as learning moments, learning opportunities. We talk about that frequently here. And then be an example for your people, right, of how they can respond, because they're looking to you. Right. And we talked about these two aspects. There's your self leadership, and then there's your leadership of others, and how you self lead and self govern. Other people are watching, and they're taking cues from you.
Absolutely. And it's really important to, as a leader, whether you're leading in your home, whether you're leading in your small church group, whether you're leading on the job, everyone, the people that follow you are looking to you or looking at you, even when you don't realize it. Um, our behaviors are really indicative of how we lead. And so we need to be mindful of that. So if you're struggling with resilience, your people will more or less struggle with resilience too, if you don't know how to bounce back from trying times. So these are, I think, really important skills that leaders should have. Um, there are some places that actually teach these skills. Um, but you can certainly start your journey without paying a single cent by doing some research, practicing some of the things that we talked about today. Journaling is also very good. I like to I like to keep a progress journal of usually anything
Mm,
that I'm working on, whether it's martial arts, whether it's sports, whether it's photography, whatever it is. What are the things that I'm struggling with? And then I plot my little course here. What are the things I need to, what do I think I need to do to get better? And then I go back and I check, have I gotten better at these things? What other areas am I struggling? And just tracking that and focusing on that and try, you'll be amazed at your progress if you have a plan for spending some time working on the thing that you are struggling with. You will get better. It's just how the brain works. It is just nature. The more you practice something with intent, with a
mhm.
certain level of difficulty, it's got to be just hard enough to push you out of your comfort zone and not to frustrate you so you stop. It's got to be a little bit. You can't just get on the bike and pedal so where it feels great. That's not, you're not going to get any stronger. You're not probably not going to lose any weight. You need to push a little bit so there's just a bit of discomfort and you will get better. So, but going back to what I said in the very beginning, if you think that life is supposed to be smooth and easy and worry free, you're going to be, I hate to use the word mediocre, but you're probably going to be mediocre at what you do. You need to, as one of my teachers said, David Peterson, who has since passed away, he would say, there is no growth in the comfort zone and no comfort in the growth zone. You have to, and that's something that he said that I grabbed onto and try to live my life by.
Yeah, absolutely. That letting go of the shouldas, right? The shoulda, woulda, couldas, is really important in developing this skill. Again, it goes back to this concept of acceptance and looking for the opportunity to grow. And so self-reflection in journaling becomes a really important aspect of this. And so think about what are the challenges, right? This is could be a journal prompt for you. What's a challenge that has made you a better person? A challenge that you've been through that's made you a better leader, right? When I think about my experience as a mother and my experience of losing my child, right? I think while it's not something that I would have volunteered for, that I would have consciously volunteered for or asked for, um, I actually recognize that I am a better person having gone through that experience. It has made me more empathetic, more in tune and in touch with my with all aspects of my being. I was, I would say, very and still lean this way, but very logical, analytical, and not very much in touch sort of with my feminine side, right? More, we all have masculine, feminine energy,
Yin and yang.
yin and yang, yes, yin and yang, and very much yang, right? And still leaning towards that aspect. But that was an experience that has me more in touch with my feminine side, more in touch with my heart and my, being heart centered and willing to ask for help and accept help, which wasn't something that and some people would say I'm still not good at it, but more than I was, and it's something that I am constantly working on. Right. And so every experience has this opportunity. So you can ask the question, what in that has made you better person, a better leader, right? And as you are, in your role as leader, be willing to share your resilient stories. because those are ways for you to inspire confidence and perseverance in your team, right? It's a way for you to connect with your people who have all been through things. And so uh, don't want you thinking that this is about pretending like things didn't happen. It's very much accepting what has happened and reframing, right? And when I have that conversation with clients, it's like reframing isn't about acting like these things didn't happen, right? It's looking at it from a different perspective, another point of view, and putting it, looking for what you can pull from it, what can you draw from it, what positives can you get from it, rather than sort of um, being in quicksand, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Um, and the other thing that this does again is that it helps you with your team members, help them learn how to handle setbacks, right? The
Absolutely.
obstacles that come as part of work. And it's interesting. I was earlier, I had YouTube on, and there was, I won't get deep into it, but there was a video that someone was sharing, compilations of people talking about losing their jobs. And this one young lady was crying about losing her job. Losing your job is can be traumatic.
Yeah.
I've only lost, I was fired once. I worked for Disney way, way back, and they fired me. Well, there was, I think I've shared this. They fired me because I had been sick 3 months in a row. I was having problems with, we kept getting a kidney infection,
Mhm.
and I was living in Southern California, and the water where I lived was horrible. So I wasn't drinking any water, wasn't hydrated. I think I was drinking Kool-Aid, right? It is sort of, yeah, I was like living off of Kool-Aid and juice
No.
because the water was
Mhm.
horrible. And so I had spent this period of time where as soon as the kidney infection cleared up, I got the kidney infection again. And it happened 3 months in a row. And then they sent me a letter and said that we hired you thinking that you were going to show up. You're not showing up. We don't need you. And so, right. And I was crushed. I was legitimately crushed. So I get getting fired is not fun, let go, laid off, whatever, you know, terminology they want to use. But it's not the end of the world.
No.
It's in the grand scheme of things, it's a job. And you got that job, you can get another job. And so again, how can what can you take from that? What can you learn from it? How can you reframe it? And how can you use it to as motivation and to build some momentum that helps you move forward.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So, any closing thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Well, if anybody's thinking about, how to begin this practice, I would start with really gauging how you handle small everyday setbacks. If you fly off the handle the moment anything untoward happens to you, probably don't have very much resilience, and you would probably benefit from doing some mindfulness practices. So I would say start there.
Good point. And emotionally flying off the handle or turning outward for a solution,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's a substance or some activity that you are addicted to, right? Something that you are using to mask, to help you avoid
Yeah.
what is. It is important for you to connect with what the challenges are. right? And know this, you're not the only one that is going through what you're going through,
Very
right?
true.
And if you come up with some novel thing that no one else has ever come up with, there's an opportunity for you in that, right? So the fact that other people have gone through, right? Lean into that and search out, seek out help and assistance from people who can help you navigate, look for, solutions or opportunities in what you're going through. Okay. And remember this, that resilience isn't about avoiding the hardship. It's about rising through it. And as a leader, how you respond to change determines how your team is going to respond to change.
Absolutely.
And you lead with resilience, you're going to help those on your team lead with resilience as well. So, Robert, someone is struggling with something and they could use some help, right? You are a professional that can help them. How would they get in touch with you to do
Right.
that?
They can reach me at inspireme at roberthilliardcoaching.com, or they can go to my website, Robert Hilliard Coaching, and simply fill out that contact sheet and let me know what ails you, what you're struggling with, and we can set up a discovery call and we can talk about working together.
Awesome. And if I could be of assistance to you, please reach out. Shiftingintoaction.now.site, shiftingintoaction.now.site, and let's have a conversation about how I might be able to assist you. If there is a topic that you would like for us to cover here on the show, please reach out to Robert or Robert and I. Let us know. We love hearing back from you
We
and
do.
about the things that are of interest. If you are watching this on replay on YouTube or Facebook or here on LinkedIn, um, please drop a comment and say replay and let us know what you think. We are here on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. Again, talking all things leadership. And occasionally we have guests. And if you'd like to be a guest, please let us know. If you want to share your leadership journey, let us know. So until next time, all right, reframe that negative stuff and ask the questions that need to be asked. And then take care.
Bye now.